What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about Polestar. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what's been coming out from the company itself, and just go over if Polestar is still considered cheap or not. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. Starting off, Friday, it did continue its nice momentum higher, so up 3.16%. You did have a little bit low for volume, but then again, that's kind of normal for a Friday. So 6.14 million shares were traded, 12.7 is the average. And on a side note, you've still seen a nice continuation of institutions really paying attention to Polestar. And for someone that's been covering Polestar for roughly 2 years, this is a breath of fresh air, because there's been often enough months where institutions didn't give two craps about Polestar. And I think that's when they announced Thomas was leaving, so the CEO. I was somewhat kind of annoyed, because it's like, well, Polestar's finally moving up, and why would you do that big switch? But clearly Polestar has bigger plans, and based on what they just came out with, the bigger plans are coming possibly. But again, you see a lot of attention coming from big institutions, even on the dark pool. Dark pool is often enough linked to shorting, so shorts is a little bit more active. But then again, so far they've been losing, because over the last 5 days alone, it is up 10.2%. Over the last 1 month, up 109%. So like phenomenal run. Absolutely round of applause for Polestar. And again, this is why I want to talk on, despite it going up 109%, is Polestar still considered cheap? And so I'm going to go over some data points, then kind of elaborate and go over that in a second. But the only thing that they really came out with recently was this right here. So they did submit 2 6Ks. One of which was this, so kind of announcing a annual annual meeting, and it is slated for October the 7th. So even though Polestar has been running up quite significantly, they did decide to switch some key roles. And I think this is why I was annoyed at the time. It's like, well, why would you take Thomas out? Like, you have been spending years trying to mold Polestar to his vision. Like, it was dumb in my opinion to kind of do that. But clearly Polestar had a lot of good behind momentum that was just carrying forward, and so that was able to really propel it higher. But clearly based on this, because they're going to be switching up one of the board directors, which I believe that they're retiring, they did also switch up the CFO. So they're trying to do some changes in-house, and who knows, there might be a lot of other entities within Polestar, because they did state in their last earnings that they're going to still continue to monitor kind of unnecessary expenses, and one way to do that is lay people off, switch them around. So yeah, I think Polestar is going through a very big transition, and you know what, rightfully so, right? The whole economy is changing right now, especially as well with rate cuts potentially being cut by 50 basis points for this actual upcoming week. That's going to be huge for the whole EV sector. So as you can kind of see, that for the September 18th meeting, there now is a level 50% likelihood of a 25 or a 50 basis point cut. So in reality, that is going to be huge for the whole EV sector. And not only that though, I feel like still a lot of people aren't really talking about it, but probably early next week, they're going to get a notice saying that they are fully compliant with the NASDAQ, because they did trade more than 10 consecutive trading days above $1 naturally. So I think Polestar will go down for the record for actually being able to rectify their own deficiency naturally. Normally, 9 times out of 10, you get those companies kind of going down that reverse stock split route, and once you go down that, it is a very steep slope down. So essentially, once again, round of applause for Polestar. So it's going to be interesting, their next earnings, just to see exactly how their sentiment is, what they have for big plans, and everything that that investors care about, right? But again, with it going up 109%, you have to look at the PS ratio, especially Polestar's not profitable right now, so you have to compare it with PS. So looking here for the last 12 months for Polestar, the PS ratio is 1.7 and the future is 0.7. So still by far, in comparison to every EV out there, even the next most discounted EV, which is NIO, like Polestar is number one. And I always like to compare it with Lucid. So Lucid, in my opinion, does have a very high multiple, a lot of high expectations on it, and this is why you do get a lot of volatility in it. I cover Lucid as well. And looking at Lucid, they currently have a PS ratio of 13.7, future of 9. So given today's price structure of Polestar, even with it running up 109%, still realistically, if it was to get Lucid's ratios and multiples, then it should be around that $14 range, around $13 to $14 range. So yes, Polestar still is at a considerable discount, and no doubtably that is why you do have a lot of institutions starting to pay attention to it more and more, and most likely that is going to only increase with rate cuts. So in reality, I think that's definitely a kick-ass thing. Shorts though, on the other hand, they're trying their best to really suppress Polestar. On Friday alone, they did increase around 87,000 shares. In the reality, that's kind of a drop in the bucket though, but 38.82 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average is 96.92, utilization 97.23, and then short score is 83.88. And then through IBKR though, does indicate around 100,000 shares is available to be shorted. So it's kind of all over the place, as you can kind of see. Sometimes it's 0, 3,000, 7,000. So definitely it's a interesting stock. If they do come out with a very good catalyst, then yeah, potentially you could see shorts naturally leave. I don't see a mother of all short squeezes kind of occurring with Polestar, so I'm not going to give you guys false hope or anything like that, but definitely shorts have probably felt the pain, because with Polestar trading below $1, you had to have had certain margin requirements. And if you think about it, let's say they were shorting at, let's say 90 cents, $1. Well, they're down a lot. So not only are they paying very high cost to borrow fees, but they're also paying margin fees. And then not only that, they lost on the fundamental just trade itself. So a lot of them have to have really deep pockets to really maintain their position over this last little bit. So definitely something to keep in mind. Getting into other data, starting off with options, $99,000 in calls was purchased on Friday, $34,000 in puts. Still not that much as what I'd like to see, but definitely once again a improvement in the right direction, especially for someone that's been covering it for 2 years. This was dismal. Absolutely dismal. But looking at some of the call options that was purchased, you do see a consensus for it to be above roughly $2 by the end of this coming week. And then looking at puts, not much puts going on. You do have some that was purchased, looks like for October 18th, it to be sub $1. So people are clearly anticipating maybe the broader market, macro events to really bring the market down, possibly. But it's only 109 options, so very little in that regard. So not much to talk on for that. With it right now at $1.63, it is exactly on this R3. And so I'm looking at the 4 hour right now. So if we move to the 1 week, you can kind of see $1.85 will be that next strong resistance / target. So 163 to 185 is kind of the parameters for that. And in reality, Polestar's technicals are also one very bullish attribute to it, because it right now is in the higher percentile of the Bollinger Band, above all the key pivotal moving averages. So the 50, 100, and 200. So Polestar is starting to show a lot of signs of breaking out. It is considered very overbought though, as I've stated in the past. Sometimes that can stay as overbought, and nothing's wrong with that, because as companies correct and whatever else. But then again, the first sign of weakness, you could see a pullback. Still, nothing really wrong with that. It's healthy for at least the technicals, but technicals are looking very a-okay for a nice breakout. A number of retail investors have kind of caught on to that. They've been buying the hell out of Polestar over the last little bit, ever since it looks like basically the low on August the 5th. So retail, I think they in among themselves deserve a round of applause for calling the exact bottom. So once again, technicals are looking a-okay. Shorts are probably just naturally are going to get squeezed out for the most part as Polestar does continue to appreciate in the stock price. Just comparing PS ratios of, for instance, Polestar to Lucid, Rivian, NIO, they're still somewhat discounted, but even comparing it to them, Polestar is at a considerable discount and should just naturally appreciate to probably around that $3 to $5 range, just based on that. I get there's certain aspects of Polestar that the market doesn't like, especially about China, just basically anything outside of the States. But let me know your thoughts on Polestar. Have you been a buyer? Have you been a seller? What have you been doing with Polestar? One final thing I just wanted to share with you, take advantage of this promo. Only roughly around 2 weeks left. Sign up for a new account and they do give you 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000. Definitely take advantage of this promo. Link in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.